You've probably heard about some of the Hussars' victorious battles, but do you know about the clashes where they completely annihilated their opponents? For the enemy, these were not just defeats. They were crushing disasters, leaving them unable to recover for years. Today, I'll show you 5 such battles. You'll discover the background, the losses on both sides, and learn what Poland and the Hussars gained from these spectacular victories. Get ready for an emotional ride. The Hussars were not just ordinary cavalry, they were a force that changed the outcomes of battles. The Swedes learned this in a very painful way at the Battle of Kircholm in the year 1605. It was one of the Hussars' greatest victories, going down in history as a prime example of this unit's incredible effectiveness. On one side, we had the Polish-Lithuanian army led by Jan Karol Chodkiewicz, numbering just under 4,000 soldiers, of whom over 1/3 were Hussars. On the other side was a massive Swedish army, nearly 14,000 strong, led by Charles of Sudermania. Chodkiewicz, fully aware of the enemy's numerical advantage, implemented a brilliant strategy. He allowed the Swedes to deploy and take up favorable positions. Using the terrain to his advantage, he created an illusion of weakness, initially pulling back his forces to lure the enemy into an attack. When the Swedes charged, the Polish cavalry led by the Hussars launched a counterattack, and this is where the magic began. 3 Hussar charges took the Swedes completely by surprise. The Hussars shattered not only the Swedish infantry, but also their cavalry, which fled the battlefield in panic. It was a classic case where a smaller yet perfectly trained army used tactics to wipe the enemy from the face of the earth. Polish losses: barely around 100 fallen. Swedish losses: nearly half their army, close to 8,000 killed, wounded or captured. Poland gained prestige and proof that the Hussars were a force to be reckoned with. After this defeat, the Swedes retreated from Lithuania for a long time, allowing the Commonwealth to reclaim key territories in Livonia. If the Battle of Kircholm was a demonstration of strategy and surprise, then the Battle of Klushino was a showcase of power, courage, and the pure form of the Hussars. In the year 1610, Hetman Stanisław Żółkiewski faced a Russian-Swedish army of over 30,000 soldiers. Polish forces: barely 7,000, mostly Hussars. How could this have been possible? The Hussars, supported by other units, had to face a well-entrenched enemy. Żółkiewski, with no other choice, decided on a frontal assault. There were no fancy maneuvers, just raw, brutal strength. The first charge didn't break the enemy, but set the stage for successive attacks. The most dramatic moment of the battle came when, after several hours of fighting, the Hussars began to run out of lances. Know what they did? Without hesitation, the Hussars continued their assault, using sabers, charge after charge, until the Russians and Swedes, unable to withstand the pressure, fled the battlefield. Polish losses: around 300 fallen. Enemy casualties: tens of thousands killed, wounded or captured. It was a massacre. Victory at Klushino opened the way for the Commonwealth to Moscow. King Sigismund III Vasa even attempted to place his son on the Russian throne. Although not everything went according to plan, the victory itself brought Poland significant political and strategic gains. Now for something truly incredible, the Battle of Hodow in 1694. This might not have been a large-scale battle like Kircholm or Klushino, but it went down in history as the Polish Thermopylae. Why? Because only 400 Hussars and Pancerni faced around 40,000 Tatars. The Tatars were known for their swift raids, so when their massive army entered Polish territory, a small group of Hussars decided to hold them off. Sounds insane? 400 cavalrymen against the entire Tatar army? But the Hussars, knowing they couldn't let the Tatars raid unchecked, decided to fight to the end. First, the Hussars held their ground in the open field. Then, realizing they couldn't hold out much longer that way, they took refuge in the small village of Hodow, where they set up improvised fortifications. This wasn't a typical charge, but a deadly, grueling defense. The Tatars repeatedly attempted to break through, but the Hussars, supported by their armor and exceptional skills, repelled every attack. Polish casualties: about 100 killed and wounded. The Tatars lost hundreds, and most importantly, were forced to retreat. Hodow demonstrated that even in the face of overwhelming numbers, the enemy couldn't break the Polish fighting spirit. This battle, though smaller in scale, earned a golden place in the Commonwealth's history, proving that the Hussars were not only an offensive force, but also capable of heroic defense. The Battle of Lubar: Cossacks and Tatars versus the Commonwealth. In 1660, The Battle of Lubar became a decisive clash during the war with the Cossacks and Tatars. The Commonwealth, under the command of Hetman Jerzy Lubomirski, faced a massive coalition army. Lubomirski had fewer than 10,000 men at his disposal, including, of course, the reliable Hussars. The opponent, Cossacks and Tatars, boasting a staggering force of over 60,000. Much like Chodkiewicz at Kircholm, Lubomirski opted for tactical deception. Instead of engaging such an overwhelming enemy force in open battle, he relied on clever tricks to confuse and force the opponent into making mistakes. The main strategy was a feigned retreat and splitting the enemy forces into smaller units, which neutralized their numerical advantage. Lubomirski arranged his troops to give the impression of a retreating, demoralized force. Seeing the Commonwealth's forces fall back, the Cossacks and Tatars eagerly pursued, confident they had the Poles cornered. But this was the moment Lubomirski had been waiting for. When the enemy pursued, the Hussars appeared on the flanks, ready for a powerful charge. At the battle's critical moment, the Hussars launched a shocking and crushing assault, leaving the Cossacks and Tatars, unprepared for this turn of events, scattered and forced to retreat. Losses on the Commonwealth side were surprisingly low. Just a few hundred fallen, a small price for such a victory compared to the enemy's overwhelming numbers. Meanwhile, the Cossacks and Tatars suffered huge losses, over 10,000 killed or wounded. Many were also taken prisoner, deepening their defeat. Victory at Lubar was crucial in the war with the Cossacks and Tatars. The rout of their forces dealt a significant blow to the anti-government coalition and prevented further raids into Commonwealth territory. Ultimately, this victory helped stabilize the front and allowed Poland to maintain control over its eastern lands. Once again, the Hussars proved that even when facing overwhelming enemy forces, their tactics, courage and skill could tilt the scales of victory in favor of the Commonwealth. The Battle of Lubar is a perfect example of how the Polish cavalry, through outstanding coordination with other units and brilliant leadership, was able to defeat a significantly stronger opponent. We cannot overlook the Battle of Berestechko in the year 1651, one of the largest clashes in 17th century Europe. This confrontation took place during the Khmelnytsky uprising, with massive forces arrayed on both sides. On one side stood the Commonwealth's army, led by King Jan Kazimierz, numbering around 80,000 soldiers, including the battle-hardened Hussars. On the other side were the powerful forces of the Cossacks and their Tatar allies, who could have numbered as many as 200,000. The main clash occurred on open terrain, where the Hussars had free rein. Initially, the enemy's numerical superiority seemed to overwhelm the Commonwealth. The Cossack-Tatar forces were well organized, and their commander, Bohdan Khmelnytsky, was experienced in fighting the Polish army. However, the turning point came when the Hussars launched a powerful charge that plowed through the Cossack and Tatar ranks like a hot knife through butter. As in every battle, the Hussars acted with surprise, speed, and brutal force. Despite their determination, the Cossacks were unable to withstand the onslaught. The battle lasted several days, with a decisive Hussar charge ultimately breaking the enemy's ranks. Interestingly, at a crucial moment in the fight, the Tatars, seeing the Hussars' advantage, betrayed their allies and withdrew from the battlefield, leaving the Cossacks to face their fate alone. This was the moment that sealed the enemy's defeat. Commonwealth losses were relatively low, barely a few thousand dead. The Cossacks and Tatars, their numbers dwindled before the Commonwealth's eyes. Around 30,000 were killed, and an enormous number of Cossacks were taken prisoner. Many met a grim fate, executed or captured as slaves. The Battle of Berestechko was one of Jan Kazimierz and the Commonwealth's greatest triumphs, ultimately crushing the Khmelnytsky uprising and bringing peace to the eastern borderlands for several years. Poland demonstrated not only its military strength, but also proved that the Hussars, despite the passage of time, were still a force to be reckoned with. In concluding this Hussar epic, we must mention the Battle of Parkany in 1683. It was one of the last major battles fought by the Hussars, and how spectacular it was. The battle took place during the Vienna campaign, with Polish forces led by Jan III Sobieski once again facing the Turks. The confrontation at Parkany had a dramatic backstory. After the great victory at Vienna, Sobieski, encouraged by his success, decided to continue the offensive and crush the remaining Ottoman forces. However, in the first clash at Parkany, the Polish army suffered a painful defeat. Sobieski's forces, taken by surprise and poorly organized, were routed by Turkish cavalry. But Sobieski did not intend to give up. Within a few days, he organized a counterattack, This time, the battle was entirely different. The Hussars, led by the king himself, charged into the Turkish positions. It was a full-scale hussar charge, powerful, swift, and overwhelming. The Turks, stunned by the ferocity of the attack, were unable to hold their ground and began to retreat. The Hussars pursued them mercilessly, and the battlefield turned into a bloody massacre. Polish losses were relatively light, around 2,000 dead, mostly in the first clash. On the Ottoman side, over 10,000 were killed or captured. This was a total annihilation of Turkish forces in the region. The victory at Parkany not only sealed the downfall of Turkish influence in Central Europe, but also solidified Jan III Sobieski's position as one of the greatest commanders of his time. Poland gained enormous international prestige, and the Hussars once again proved they could change the course of battles. For over 100 years, the Hussars struck fear into the hearts of Europe's armies. Their incredible effectiveness stemmed from a combination of excellent training, extraordinary tactics, and unparalleled equipment. The lightness of their armor, combined with the brutal force of their charge, could break even the largest armies. In these battles, the Hussars crushed their foes, showing the world that a smaller, well-organized army could achieve miracles on the battlefield. In addition to military victories, Poland gained something else, a legacy that endures to this day. The Hussars became a symbol not only of military might, but also of courage, honor, and resilience. Even today, when we think of the power of the Commonwealth in its golden age, the image of a hussar galloping on horseback, wings streaming behind, bringing inevitable defeat to the enemy, comes to mind. Each of these battles is a history lesson, showing that even in the most challenging times, Polish fighting spirit and tactical genius could tip the scales of victory. The Hussars were not just an army, they were a symbol of resilience that left an everlasting mark in the hearts of the Polish people.